Yeah, cool, man. I think you basically answered all my questions. Just one random question to the end. What body fat percentage do you prefer to stay at for, being strong and doing cool stuff in the gym and also to have good nutrient partitioning?
For me personally, I'm probably around floating between like 14 and 16, depending. I don't really focus on my body fat percentage all that much. I really treat the gym like an experiment at this point. It's so I can kind of put out content that can help other folks. Now, my fitness is really, it's almost become not about me anymore. I go so that I can experiment to put out better stuff for other people. And, but yeah, so I float typically between maybe like 14 and 16, maybe 17 if, if I went a little crazy with family or whatever, because I live in the deep South. If, in case, people can't tell, I'm kind of country. So, yeah, we get a little crazy with the fried food sometimes. I try to stay away as much as possible, but fried catfish kind of, can't resist.
Yeah. Anytime I'm anything below like 12%, people just look at me and like, yeah, have you done some sports like when you were younger or something? And I'm like, yeah, man, I'm busting my freaking ass an hour and a half a day. Thank you.
But so, also what I think, this is a very good point indeed, because if you don't have enough muscles, then I mean, being super lean, it doesn't really give. I mean, it's nothing. You don't look like you lift, as you said. But another thing I want to mention, and just to say that I just understood over time, getting to very lean stage, very low body fat percentage, is that for the general population, or for if you aim a certain look, okay, I mean, being very lean is nice, having 7% body fat, but the only person who will know that you are 7% and not 13 is just you. And besides that, your life will be just fucking miserable, because you will be super hungry. Your sex drive is gonna be inexistent. Exactly. So your libido is gonna be down. So truly, in my opinion, that's not sustainable. I mean, I see a lot of guys that say, "Oh, I want to get to 7% body fat," because they see these YouTube stars or these television stars, whatever, and then they think that once they will get to that body fat percentage, they're gonna be basically, that's it. Their life is gonna be fucking awesome all of the sudden. No, guys, it's just miserable. That's something that you want to be, that body fat percentage. If you are, for instance, doing a competition, of course, you're going to be also lower. But if you're just a regular dude, nobody will ever give a crap if you are 7%, if you're 15% body fat.
Yeah, I mean, there is, it's in the age of social media and YouTube, again, we tend to forget that there is a reason why we have a range, right? So it's between about 8 or something till 15, but we tend to forget that 15 is not, that doesn't mean that if you reach 15, that means that you're a fat bastard. That means that you should generally not go much over that, but we tend to think that this range in practice really means like between 8 to 10, and anything over that is just fat. So
exactly, obese after 10. Yes, indeed.
Yeah, so for people who are listening to this, there are a couple of important takeaways. So number one, don't be a dumbass like me and take pictures of your legs as well. So that is
very, very good takeaway.
So that is one important point. The other thing is that at this body fat percentage, so let's assume for simplicity's sake, let's say I'm 14% on this picture. I could still technically effectively try to gain muscle. However, there would be a couple of problems with that. Number one, it would be a very short bulk, quote unquote, from this point onwards, because I have a pretty limited amount of body fat that I can still put on where the bulk would be still effective. So that's one problem. The other thing is that I guess at this point it would be very psychologically unrewarding, because at this point, if you keep on gaining, you just look progressively worse, basically, because you're not able to see the muscle that you put on at this point, but you definitely see all the fat that you put on. And also you're a lot more susceptible. I mean, a little bit of water retention at this point can make you look just really...
Can't have that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean...
But that all comes down to personal preference too. You know, you got to ask the client, ask the individual, you know, what are you comfortable with? You know what I mean? As long as you lay out the expectations, you know what I mean? Like if someone says to you, I want to put on as much muscle as humanly possible in the next 6 months.
Yeah.
Then you have to be like, okay, for that to happen, you will be putting on a bit of body fat. Are you happy with that? Again, if your client is not a competitive bodybuilder, the guy who just wants to look good on the weekend, just know the leaner they want to stay, the harder it's going to be to put on a lot of muscle.
Most people have like a kind of an optimal level of leanness where they just like their body the most. So I know for myself that at this point, I'm just a little bit fatter than I like to be. So I also know that, I mean, I've been down to like about 8% was kind of the leanest I've ever been. And yeah, if I look at pictures now, I'm like, damn, that dude looks lean. But I just know that it felt like shit. Like I was basically preoccupied with food, and I also, for the most part, I just looked a little bit too small. I just didn't have enough muscle mass to really look good in general at that body fat percentage. But I know that, I don't know, like 2, 3, maybe 4 kilos lower than I am at the moment is the point where I have kind of a nice balance between leanness and still looking sort of like I lift. So
find what you're comfortable with. You know, if you're comfortable putting on a little bit of fat to gain a lot of muscle, be it. If you're not comfortable with that, if you're comfortable staying relatively lean, just know your muscular growth will be not as good. And yeah, you just got to deal with that.
So hey Mike, nice to talk to you. It's Abel Esprit. How are you doing? How are you doing, man?
I'm not sleeping well. The mold in my house is just killing me.
Yeah, good. We are going to talk about cutting and the new method of eliminating mold in your environment. Okay, not funny. So, like, would you at this point, so just to like kickstart things, do like, I don't know, a couple of like you said, like, I don't know, protein sparing modified fasts. And so let's say for the first couple of days, you know, like 1,000 calorie deficit or even bigger. And then as, you know, like then kind of slow it down from there. So maybe for the first week, create like, I don't know, not too like, I don't know, like a 5,000 calorie or like, you know, like 1.5 pound or even like a kilogram of weight loss for the first week. And then basically that will get me like a full body fat percentage drop. So, I mean, that way within basically 1 week, you can go from 15% down to 14% and in another week down to like 13%. Do you think that's feasible for the first 1 or 2 weeks because you have more body fat and you can go more aggressively? Or would you go kind of more moderately and slower basically to play it safer, basically?
Yeah, I don't think so. I think I would go with a moderate approach, and maybe if you go or get a bit higher in the body fat, then I would do like the aggressive cut. But I would test it, so really see how your body reacts if you just need a small deficit or if you really need a big deficit. So just use the first 1 or 2 weeks to estimate how big your deficit has to be, and then the next cutting cycle to do it then a little bit more aggressive.
I've had classmates even ask me stuff about, you know, because I'll be in class and the professor will ask a question and I'll know the answer from the personal training course with Minnow. And, you know, I've had people come up after class and ask me questions about what I'm doing and my writing, because I've talked about that with classmates also. And I've told them, like, you know, Minnow's course, I mean this sincerely, it's the most I've learned about fitness ever at any point. And I'm in my last semester of my master's degree in exercise science, and I learned more from Minnow in that 6 months of his course than I did in my entire 1.5 years at university for my master's degree. It was excellent. I describe it as a 6-month long research review.
If you want to get to a certain body fat percentage, but as Abel was saying, you're miserable, you're thinking about food all the time, you hate your life, it's not fucking worth it. Like, it is not worth it. If it is causing you that much harm in your life, for what? For someone to say, oh, you look nice.
Yeah.
Literally, you know what I mean? So it shouldn't make you feel like you are about to die. People, especially in our industry, they think way too short term. You know, you always see these 12-week transformations or this and that. I've never seen a 3-year transformation. Or like a before and after like that, you know what I mean? It's always 12 weeks by our program. This is what happens in 12 weeks. Okay, what happens after that after those 12 weeks?
It's interesting to ask from you because you're so freaking lean. Like, is there any kind of like strategies, I don't know, supplementation or just habits, food choices, anything like that that helps you at this point? Because obviously when you're this lean, you have to be pretty smart and strategic about things if you want to feel satisfied and sane.
So a lot of the stuff that we picked up in the course in regards to how you sort of structure your meals. So yeah, I would, depending on the meal, I'll always start with something sweet first. This sort of leads into the whole, there's always room for dessert. Even if you've stuffed your face full of ridiculous amounts of food, you can always have something sweet at the end. So appetite seems to be a little bit more regulated by different tastes, as a bit of a summary. So what I like to do, if you have something sweet, you're hungry straight away again, which is weird. So I will always start my meals off with my sweetest sort of food. So if I've got, as an example, if I start my meals off with Greek yogurt and some berries versus ending the meal with that sort of dessert-like meal.
Yeah.
Okay, so I like to finish off with something salty. So like, this might sound like a really odd combo, but these odd combos work really well for me. So I'll have some Greek yogurt with some frozen berries. I like to use frozen berries just because they take a lot longer to eat.
Yeah,
I find anything that takes a lot longer to eat is is a lot more filling. You know what I mean? I think carrots are very filling for myself. I feel very satisfied with them. So I find, eating foods that take you a long time to eat, your meal should, take anywhere between 15 to 20 minutes.
Yeah.
I think, you know what I mean? So if it doesn't, make sure it does. So find foods that are going to make you chew more, sit down more, be more mindful, all that sort of stuff. But yeah, back to the example. So I would have my yogurt with berries first, and then I'll have my, whatever it is, avocado, salmon, dark chocolate. Those are like my go-tos. And yeah, I'll finish off the meal with that. I know it sounds very odd. It's like, what the fuck? Greek yogurt first, chocolate with avocado and salmon. It's like, well, I like it. And I find that to be very, very satiating, you know what I mean, for myself.
And I think a really good example of this concept is Omar Isuf on YouTube. So for many years, he was just focusing on training and he was never super lean. He was never showing off his abs. But, now we can see that after training for over 10 years and now he has a good amount of muscle mass, only now is he flirting around with, with these lower body fat percentages. And you can see that even he's not super big when he's really lean. And generally he just looks a lot better with his shirt on and everything when he's a little bit higher in body fat percentage. So yeah, it's probably time for young guys to realize that you should really focus on building muscle because that's a lot more fun, and you actually have a chance to look like you lift when you have your shirt on. So that's good.
Yes.
Yeah, which is how you spend the majority of your life anyway. So
exactly. In summer, unless you live in Brazil, you don't have to really worry about this. Seriously.
Just to give people some perspective, what kind of body fat percentage are you hanging around at the moment?
That depends on your measurement method. If you're using internet standards, -3%. If you're using on calipers with 8 sites, I'm sitting at around 5%. I got a DEXA done quite a while ago, and I think my score in the DEXA was around 9% or 8.9 or something like that. but I was also a little bit chunkier than what I am now. I am due for a DEXA scan soon, but yes, if you were to sort of, I guess if you were to see me, I look tiny in shirts, tiny in clothes, which
But you
I
look
think
sick without them.
Exactly. Well, so I like to think so anyway. But in clothes, I don't even look like I lift, which I think is definitely the case for a natural who is trying to maintain a very lean physique all year round, which is what I try to do. So.
Yeah, I mean, as people will realize, like once you're lean, the whole prospect of ever being too big is just not something you will ever have to worry about.